Next in the urban design category, we have the Devonport Living City Stage 2 Hotel and Waterfront Park, and we've got Neil Appleton here today from Lyons to speak. Thank you.
Okay, this project is stage 2 of a 2-stage project. The first stage was completed a couple of years ago with the building of the Pineapple Centre, which is a civic function centre, library, convention centre and council offices, a car park and a market hall. Stage 2 is the Waterfront Park and Hotel, and it's Living City, led by the Devonport City Council's idea of trying to build urban regeneration for the city rather than seeing dissipated, that it's actually strengthened through the development. The hotel is a private development, whereas the park is a publicly funded development. The council hosted, you can see Pineapple Centre adjacent to the hotel and the elevated walkway. So the council hosted this as a competition, which we won, based on a fairly simple premise of connecting the city down to the waterfront. And finding a way of getting that public and private capital working in unison to drive that idea. 3 simple axes, one that runs past the civic centre down to the waterfront as a straight line, another one that folds into the crux of the hotel, which folds around and creates an entry at Best Street through the hotel and runs through as an elevated walkway across the top of the road, and a third one that runs from the Book Street Mall down to connect to the lighthouse and with a view out to the street. And all of those axes are maintained through and reinforced through the design idea. So you can see the civic centre, the car park, the market hall, and now the new hotel and waterfront park with the structures that go with the waterfront park, which I'll run through in a minute. I guess our strategy with the hotel was to try to find a way of, recognising that it would go to a private funded development, and we would be novated was to have a very strong idea about the hotel and that it works in close unison with the elevated walkway, and that it forms a kind of bridge connection between the city and the waterfront, and obviously its relationship to the Spirit of Tasmania and as it comes in. So as it crosses the road, it obviously leaps past the hotel and out to the end of the as a kind of pier, and that relationship between the public and private capital, the walkway and the hotel is really profound. Drops it down across the road into a play area, a nature play area, which is also framed by a pavilion, which I'll talk to in a minute. And obviously one of the key ideas of the hotel and the elevated walkway, and indeed the extended park, is to drive the tourist economy. Everyone comes in on the Spirit of Tasmania, but mostly everybody leaves and nobody comes into the city. So the idea is to kind of create a landmark and an attraction, not to mention somewhere for people to stay if they do come across to the city. So 250 room hotel. And obviously the elevated walkway reaches across to the river and creates a platform for viewing to and from the boat. And obviously we've regenerated the foreshore as well to create somewhere for the public to come to. And obviously it's a fairly important part of their economy, the Spirit coming in and going, and certainly Tasmania's economy. And so to create a platform that does have a dynamic relationship with the river was one of the key parts of the brief. The hotel is a simple but strong form. It sort of folds away to allow that vista from the Book Street Mall down to the lighthouse to occur. The restaurant and entry off Best Street, and the restaurant connecting across the walkway runs from the Pineapple Centre up onto the elevated walkway to provide universal access across the road. And obviously that strong structure reaches out to the river. And obviously, as I mentioned, universal access, so it does provide the ability for the public to come and go from either end of the elevated walkway via stairs that then bring you to the nature play park, and then furthermore connecting through with a waterfront promenade through the picnic shelter, which obviously has a kind of remnant idea of the old piers that reach out into the river all the way up through the Mersey River as remnants. It's all of the materials in the park are built from very long-lasting and durable materials. It's a pretty tough environment in which to work. And another part of the project, obviously we designed the park with Aspect, but we also designed bus shelters. So these are the public bus shelters which have to function from 2 directions given the prevailing weather. so that people can wait for buses on either side of the pavilions. And then finally the turntable pavilion, which is, I guess, the feature that's closest to the to Bass Strait. Sorry, I've gone the wrong way there, haven't I? And the pavilion is effectively evocative of the turntable. There was a burnt turntable in this area of the park, which was buried, which was then excavated by the council and the areas taken away. So we've actually tried to, I guess, reinforce the notion there was a turntable here. There's a historic story that runs around this, and we've managed to bring back some of the rails and integrate them into the shelter. So that's it.
Thanks, Neil. Digby, did you want to start?
No, I actually don't have a question for this one. You've managed to answer them written down, so thanks. I'm okay.
In looking at this beforehand, the scale of the bridge, was that largely directed as a design gesture, or was that something in terms of briefing for council about?
It was a briefing of the council, a master plan that was done by another architect for the Living City, which was then reframed through the competition. Actually had this enormous, great big circular one that went halfway out into the river. I guess what we were trying to do was to keep it kind of a little bit more limited. And so it is set up to be able to take stalls along the thing and still have promenading. So there's obviously the ability for them to set a kind of market up on there to extend the events. But as it is now, you can get 100 people at the end of the pier at any time that the boat's coming and going. So it sort of does take a fair capacity. Yeah, so it's a generous walkway.
And then below there's a series of soft landscaping elements. Were they briefed, and there's actually uses like that amphitheatre, which sort of is stepping you down to the river, or did that largely come out of responses that you had?
Well, responses to the site, obviously we had to create areas that were civil and useful. So there's a water feature, which again has been scaled down. Originally it was sort of all bells and whistles, and now I think it's kind of more bedded into the park. There's a geo walk, so we've sort of worked with Aspect to find local stones, so that there's a story about the geology of the place as well, and all of the planting has been taken as an idea from the Cradle Mountains all the way down, and there's a sort of endemic planting that does go. And then there's obviously the grassed areas, which the council uses as large event spaces. So the opening of the park was a couple of weekends ago, and the TSO visited Devonport for the first time, and there was 5,000 plus people, filled the whole park and actually covered the road. So Formby Road, which runs through the park, was closed off, and of course the traffic can go around through the city. And that whole road and the park, the amphitheatre, the park and the foreshore park was covered, and the amphitheatre, the pavilion that was set up for the TSO, which faced away from the water back up the park, you know, so it can hold 5,000 plus people on the grassed areas. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I guess that's sort of the question. It's quite a large intervention from a town,
yeah,
you know, a Tasmanian town. And so, yes, getting it used because it is of that civic scale. I'd be interested in the feedback of the people of Devonport as much as the visitor experience.
Sure.
I was just, you made that connecting visitors to this landmark. Is there sort of in your design thinking, apart from just visually seeing it when you come in?
Yeah.
I have come in on the boat. I was hoping actually to get off on the trip. Was there any thinking about sort of uniting that, departing the boat to get round to that part of the site?
Oh, Tasports is pretty firm on how they're going to dock it. They're currently building a new terminal. So, you know, I can't imagine it. What we have tried to do, though, is to get the small ferry that comes from Eastern Devonport across to dock at this location. The council's still trying to find a way of getting the smaller ferry to dock at the base of this pier on a platform that can go up and down with the tides, and then come onto this pier and then up across to the civic area. But the spirit, I mean, all of the cars that drive off there have to come back around into the city, I suppose. Yeah. I will say one thing. No, it's an interesting thing. It was more about trying to provide a sense that the city has something going on. And previously on the site, there was an old department store and a car park and a tyre station, which had basically poisoned the site. So the whole point of Living City was to build the car park and the council offices, which then allowed the department store to move into the old council offices. And obviously the car park, which is over the whole site, to move into the new car parking structure, which is closer to the big box retail. And then that allowed them to then build the hotel and the Waterfront Park, which then serves the convention centre in Paranaple. So it's kind of like this strong economic move. And I guess what we were trying to do is to find a strong, simple idea that connected to the waterfront. I mean, and what we tried to do was build a durable idea for the hotel that would withstand the rigors of what was effectively a pretty commercial venture in the end.
Let's squeeze in one question about this, the community. So all the axes that you've set up was logical and urban frameworks that were set up. Has the community started to utilise those, or is that, will that come with the development of the other aspects?
No, I think the community's already starting to utilise it. It's got an intimate scale as much as it's got a large scale. So the community's already using it. I mean, effectively before they couldn't go anywhere through that area. It was a totally inaccessible area.